Admiral Frank Morgan stood at the wide viewport of Earth Space Command Headquarters, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass. The stars looked the same as they always had, but everything had changed. 12 hours ago, the message arrived from the beings who called themselves the Galactic Hegemony. 6 months to surrender or be destroyed. "They're watching us right now," he said to the empty room. His voice was calm despite the weight pressing down on his shoulders. The door hissed open behind him. "Admiral, the Council is waiting," said a young officer. Inside the emergency chamber of the United Earth Council, 23 faces looked up as Morgan entered. Some showed fear, others anger. A few remained carefully blank. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morgan began, "as you know, at 600 hours today, Earth received a transmission from the alien coalition known as the Galactic Hegemony. They've given us an ultimatum. Join them as a client species or face extinction. We have 6 months to decide." President Diane Powell leaned forward. "And our chances if we fight?" Morgan didn't sugarcoat it. "Their technology is at least a century beyond ours. Their smallest ships could destroy our entire defense fleet. We have no chance in a direct confrontation." The room fell silent. "So we surrender?" asked Defense Secretary Ben Alvarez, his voice tight. "I didn't say that," Morgan replied. From the back of the room, a voice spoke up. "What if we build something they don't expect?" All eyes turned to the speaker. Commander Lisa Wright stood against the wall, not officially invited but there as Morgan's technical advisor. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her uniform bore the patches of the Orbital Shipyard Division. "Commander Wright," President Powell said, "you have a suggestion." Lisa stepped forward. "The hegemony gave us 6 months. They think it's a courtesy, but it's actually our advantage." She tapped her tablet, and a hologram appeared over the table. It showed Earth, surrounded by a cloud of dots. "This is our orbital junkyard. 60 years of satellites, space stations, and debris. The aliens see it as proof of our primitive nature. I see it as raw material." "For what?" someone asked. "A ship unlike anything they've ever encountered. Something that doesn't follow their rules of design or technology. Something unpredictable." Morgan watched the council members' reactions. Most looked skeptical. "You want to build a warship out of junk," Alvarez said with a short laugh. Lisa didn't flinch. "I want to build a warship that uses everything we know in ways they can't predict. The hegemony has 7 species, each with thousands of years of technological development. But they all followed similar paths. Their technology is advanced but uniform, predictable." She zoomed in on several debris clusters. "We have Russian tech from the 2020s floating next to American satellites from the 2040s, Chinese station modules, Indian propulsion systems, private company experiments, military hardware, abandoned prototypes. It's the most diverse collection of space technology in this part of the galaxy." President Powell studied the hologram. "You really think this could work?" "No," Lisa said honestly, "but I think it's our only chance." Morgan stepped forward. "The commander's idea is unorthodox, but right now, unorthodox is exactly what we need. The hegemony expects us to either surrender or fight conventionally and lose. They don't expect this." The council debated for hours. As the sun set outside, President Powell called for a vote. "Project Phoenix Rising is approved," she announced as the final tally came in. "Commander Wright, you have full authorization to proceed. Admiral Morgan will oversee the operation." As the council members filed out, Morgan approached Lisa. "You know this is nearly impossible," he said quietly. Lisa nodded, her eyes on the hologram of Earth's orbital junk cloud. "Nearly impossible is still possible, Admiral. You'll need a team. The best we have." "I already have a list," she replied. "Unconventional thinkers. People who see possibilities where others see problems." Morgan looked back at the viewport, at the stars that now held a threat. 6 months to build a legend from leftovers. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes the best weapons are the ones your enemy thinks are worthless. The small stealth shuttle glided silently through Earth's orbital lanes. Inside, Commander Lisa Wright checked her navigation screen as Chief Engineer Paul Carter pressed his face against the viewport. "There it is," Paul said, pointing to a tumbling satellite. "Weather monitoring station from 2031. Solar panels are still intact." Lisa nodded. "Add it to the collection list." For 3 weeks now, they had been mapping and cataloging every piece of useful debris in Earth's orbit. Their shuttle was one of 12, each with a team of engineers and salvage experts working around the clock. "The aliens are watching that section," warned Maria Gonzalez from the pilot's seat. Her fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease. Once the top pilot in the Space Force, Maria had been grounded after questioning orders during a training exercise. Now her skills made her perfect for navigating the dangerous debris field. "They won't see us," Lisa assured her. "Their scanners are looking for military movement, not garbage collectors." Paul laughed, the sound echoing in the small cabin. "That's us. Garbage collectors saving the world." From the observation deck of the International Space Station, the alien representative Kuloth watched Earth through multispectrum eyes. Beside him stood his human liaison, Dr. Steve Palmer. "Your people are busy," Kuloth remarked, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native tongue into English. "These small ships move constantly." Steve nodded, trying to look relaxed. "Just clearing some orbital paths. Safety precaution." Kuloth's head tilted, a gesture Steve had learned indicated amusement. "A waste of time. Soon the hegemony will clean your orbit properly, with technology your kind cannot imagine." Steve forced a smile. "We like keeping busy." In a hidden facility beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Alan Foster hunched over a workbench. Pieces of a damaged hegemony probe lay spread before him. The aliens had allowed it to crash on Earth as a demonstration of their technology, expecting humans to be impressed. Instead, Earth had secretly recovered it for study. "Found something," Alan muttered to himself as he isolated a component from the probe's shield generator. He placed it in a testing chamber and fired a focused pulse. The alien material flared briefly, then failed. Alan blinked, then repeated the test. Same result. His hands trembled as he reached for the communication panel. "Get me Commander Wright," he said. Now, back at the newly established shipyard, hidden within a hollowed-out asteroid at Earth's L4 Lagrange point, Lisa received Alan's message. She gathered her core team in the makeshift command center. Around them, hundreds of workers sorted through the first deliveries of salvaged materials. "The hegemony shields have a weakness," Lisa explained, displaying Alan's data. "They've evolved beyond nuclear technology, considering it primitive. Their shields can't handle certain radiation patterns from our outdated nuclear systems." Paul whistled. "So our junk is actually our secret weapon." "Exactly," Lisa replied. "We'll build our ship around modified nuclear submarines as the core power source." Maria looked skeptical. "Submarines? In space? The shielding and containment systems are perfect for our needs," Lisa explained. "And the military decommissioned 3 last year. They're sitting in a naval yard in San Diego." Major John Kelly, newly assigned as security lead, spoke up. "How do we get submarines into orbit without the aliens noticing?" Lisa smiled. "We don't bring them up whole. We bring them up piece by piece, hidden among the junk we're already collecting." As they discussed plans, an alarm sounded. A hegemony scout ship was approaching the shipyard's position. "They're scanning this sector," the sensor operator reported, voice tight with tension. Lisa remained calm. "Release the chaff pattern." Outside, hundreds of small pieces of debris were suddenly propelled outward, creating a cloud of moving junk that obscured the shipyard. On the hegemony vessel, the alien commander observed the strange movement of Earth debris. "What are they doing?" he asked his science officer. "Unknown," came the reply. "Their orbital garbage moves in unexpected patterns. Perhaps their gravity control is as primitive as their ships." The commander lost interest. Continue the patrol elsewhere. These humans waste time moving trash while their deadline approaches. Back in the shipyard, Lisa watched the alien ship depart on the scanner. They don't understand, she said quietly. What looks like junk to them will be the weapon that saves us all. The hidden shipyard buzzed with activity day and night. 2 months had passed since Project Phoenix Rising began, and the strange vessel was taking shape. Inside the hollowed asteroid, massive cranes moved salvaged parts into position, while welders worked in zero gravity, their torches creating brief stars in the darkness. Lisa stood on an observation platform with Admiral Morgan, watching the progress. It looks like a mess, Morgan admitted, studying the asymmetrical hull that resembled a floating junkyard more than a warship. That's part of its beauty, Lisa replied. The hegemony expects uniformity. Their ships are perfect in design and function. Ours is unpredictable. No two sections are the same. Below them, workers guided a massive section of hull plating into place. The metal had once been part of an old Chinese space station, now repurposed as armor. We've reinforced it with a layer of compressed space debris, Lisa explained. Paul melted down smaller junk pieces and created a composite material stronger than anything we've used before. Morgan nodded. And the weapons systems. That's where Dr. Foster's discoveries are proving invaluable. In a nearby laboratory, Alan Foster worked with a team of nuclear engineers. They had modified the reactor from one of the submarines, adapting it to create the specific radiation pattern that disrupted hegemony shields. The pulse needs to be precisely calibrated, Alan explained to his team. Too strong, and we'll fry our own systems. Too weak, and it won't affect their shields. A technician looked up from her workstation. Dr. Foster, we've finished modifying the delivery system. It looks like a standard communication array from the outside. Alan smiled. Perfect. The hegemony won't recognize it as a weapon until it's too late. In another section of the shipyard, Major John Kelly ran combat drills with his security team. Unlike traditional space marines, Kelly had selected people with unconventional backgrounds, rock climbers, deep sea divers, and extreme sports athletes. The interior of our ship won't have nice, straight corridors, Kelly told them as they navigated a chaotic mock-up of the vessel's interior. It will be a three-dimensional maze of repurposed components. We need to know every shortcut and hiding place. One of his team, a former cave diver named Susan Baker, moved effortlessly through a tight passage. The aliens won't be able to move through these spaces like we can, she noted. Their physiology isn't built for it. Kelly nodded. Exactly. Our ship's design is our first line of defense. Back in the main construction area, Paul Carter supervised the installation of the propulsion system, a bizarre combination of chemical rockets, ion drives, and experimental gravity manipulators. It doesn't make any sense, said one of the engineers, scratching his head as he studied the schematics. It's not supposed to, Paul replied with a grin. When we fire all these systems in sequence, we'll be able to move in ways the aliens can't predict. Their targeting computers will go crazy trying to track us. As the construction continued, Maria Gonzalez worked in a simulator, developing navigation protocols for the unusual ship. The center of mass keeps shifting depending on which systems are active, she muttered, fingers flying over the controls as the simulator threw another warning. Lisa stepped into the simulator room, having problems. Maria shook her head. Having breakthroughs. This ship moves like nothing I've ever flown before. It's like trying to pilot a drunk octopus. But she executed a maneuver that should have been impossible, slipping between two virtual obstacles. Once you understand its quirks, you can do things no conventional ship could manage. Lisa smiled. That's exactly what we need. An alarm blared throughout the shipyard. Everyone froze. Hegemony patrol ship approaching, announced the control room over the speakers. All personnel to stealth positions. The workers moved quickly to predetermined locations, shutting down obvious power sources and activating the asteroid's outer camouflage systems. The partially built ship sat in darkness, looking like nothing more than a collection of salvaged junk. As the alien vessel passed nearby, Lisa held her breath. 3 more months until the deadline. 3 more months to complete humanity's strange hope. The alarm finally silenced. All clear, came the announcement. They've moved on. Work resumed immediately, the sound of construction filling the asteroid once more. Piece by piece, humanity's junkyard warship continued to take shape, a legend in the making. With 3 months left before the hegemony's deadline, the strange ship was finally complete. It hung in the center of the asteroid shipyard, its massive hull a patchwork of different metals and technologies spanning a century of human innovation. Old solar panels stretched alongside modern energy collectors. Satellite dishes repurposed as sensor arrays dotted the uneven surface. Nothing matched, yet somehow everything worked together. "Time to name her," Lisa said, standing with Admiral Morgan and the project leaders. Morgan studied the vessel. In naval tradition, a ship's name should reflect its purpose and spirit. He paused, then nodded decisively. The U.S. Defiant. The name seemed fitting. This odd collection of junk and spare parts represented humanity's defiance against overwhelming odds. The ship needed a captain. After reviewing dozens of candidates, they selected Navy Captain Greg Summers, a man known for unconventional tactics and cool-headed decision-making. His first officer would be Lieutenant Commander Nancy Clark, a brilliant strategist with engineering experience. When Captain Summers first saw his new command, he stopped in his tracks. "That's not what I expected," he admitted to Lisa. "She looks like junk," Lisa agreed, "but that's her greatest strength. The hegemony will underestimate her, just as they underestimate us." Summers walked the strange corridors of his new ship, meeting his crew. Unlike traditional military vessels with clear divisions and departments, the Defiant operated more like a small town. Engineers could quickly become gunners. Communications officers doubled as tactical analysts. Everyone cross-trained on multiple systems. In the command center, built from the combined control rooms of 3 nuclear submarines, Summers met with his officers. "This ship breaks every rule of design and function," he told them. "Our job is to break every rule of engagement. The hegemony expects us to fight like they do. We won't." Nancy Clark studied the ship's specifications with a frown. "Captain, the power systems are unstable. If the primary reactor goes above 80% capacity while the secondary systems are active, we could have a cascade failure." "Then we keep it below 80%, Summers replied simply. "The weapons range is limited compared to hegemony ships," pointed out Weapons Officer Rick Johnson. "So we get closer," Summers countered. "Our shield technology is a century behind theirs," added another officer. "Then we don't get hit," Summers said with a slight smile. "This ship wasn't built to win a fair fight. It was built to fight in ways they can't prepare for." The time came for the Defiant's first test flight. The asteroid's massive hidden doors opened slowly, revealing the star-filled blackness of space. On the bridge, Captain Summers settled into his chair. "Take us out, Lieutenant Martinez," he ordered. The ship moved forward slowly, its mismatched engines humming. As they cleared the asteroid, Summers gave the command to increase speed. The Defiant responded, accelerating faster than expected. "All systems nominal," Nancy reported, checking her displays. "Let's see what she can do," Summers said. Tactical course through the debris field. Full evasive pattern. Maria Gonzalez, now serving as the ship's chief pilot, smiled as her fingers danced across the controls. The strange vessel moved in ways that defied conventional physics, using its asymmetrical design to perform maneuvers no regular ship could manage. Then the alarm sounded. "Captain, we have a power surge in the main reactor," Nancy called out. "Approaching critical levels." Paul Carter's voice came over the comm from engineering. "The secondary coolant system is failing. We need to shut down now, or we'll have a meltdown." The ship shuddered as energy cascaded through its systems. Lights flickered on the bridge. "All stop," Summers ordered calmly. Initiate emergency shutdown procedures. But the shutdown sequence failed. The reactor continued heating up, threatening to destroy the ship they had spent months building. Manual override, Paul shouted from engineering. I need to get to the core containment area. As the crew raced to prevent disaster, Captain Summers remained in his chair, outwardly calm despite the chaos. This was the true test of the Defiant and her crew, not just whether the technology worked, but how they handled it when it didn't. We didn't come this far to fail now, he said quietly. Find a way. The Defiant shuddered as alarms blared throughout the ship. The reactor core temperature continued to rise toward critical levels. Manual override isn't responding, Paul reported from engineering, his voice strained. The connection between the old submarine systems and our new controls has failed. Captain Summers remained calm. Options. There's a manual release valve in Section 7, Paul said. But the radiation levels are too high. No one could survive long enough to reach it. Chief Engineer Samantha West stood up from her station. The old maintenance tunnels from the Chinese station module run parallel to Section 7. I can get there through the secondary access. Those tunnels weren't meant to connect to that section, Nancy objected. They don't, Sam replied, already moving toward the exit. But there's only a thin barrier between them. I can cut through. Summers nodded. Do it. Sam raced through the ship's maze-like corridors, grabbing cutting tools and a radiation suit on the way. The ship's strange design, once considered a weakness, now offered a solution no conventional vessel would have. 5 minutes to critical failure, Nancy's voice announced over the comm system. Inside a narrow maintenance tunnel, Sam crawled on her hands and knees. The air grew hotter as she approached the section near the overheating reactor. Her radiation meter clicked faster. I'm at the barrier, she reported, activating her cutting tool. The thin metal wall slowly gave way under the laser's heat. 2 minutes, Nancy's voice warned. Sam pushed through the opening she created, ignoring the heat that penetrated her suit. The manual release valve was just ahead, glowing red from the overheated systems around it. I see it, she gasped, reaching for the valve with gloved hands. The metal seared through her gloves, but she didn't let go. With all her strength, she turned the valve. Nothing happened. It stuck, she reported, panic rising in her voice. On the bridge, Summers turned to Nancy. Reroute emergency power to the coolant pumps. All of it. That could fry every system on the ship, Nancy warned. Better than being vaporized, Summers replied. As Nancy worked furiously at her console, Sam made one final attempt. Using a piece of debris as leverage, she pushed against the valve. With a groan of metal, it finally turned. Got it, she cried as coolant began flowing through the system. The temperature gauge on the bridge slowly stopped rising, then began to fall. Reactor stabilizing, Nancy reported, relief evident in her voice. We're not going to explode today. When Sam returned to the bridge, exhausted and with burned hands, the entire crew applauded. That's what makes this ship special, Summers told them when the celebration quieted. Not the technology, but the people who can adapt when things go wrong. As the Defiant limped back to the shipyard for repairs, they received an urgent message from Earth Command. A hegemony warship has entered the solar system ahead of schedule, Admiral Morgan informed them. They claim they're just observing, but they're moving closer to Earth by the hour. Summers looked around at his crew, then at Lisa. How soon can we be combat ready? The reactor is stable now, Paul reported. We can run at 70% indefinitely. That's enough for most systems. We have 1 month left before their deadline, Lisa reminded them. They're not supposed to be here yet. Maybe they got impatient, Nancy suggested. Or maybe they detected our activities. The sensor officer suddenly straightened in his chair. Captain, the hegemony ship has changed course. They're heading directly toward us. On the main screen, they watched as the alien vessel approached, sleek, perfectly proportioned, and bristling with advanced weapons. Next to it, The Defiant looked like exactly what it was, a cobbled-together collection of space junk. "They've detected us," Nancy said quietly. Summers settled into his command chair. "Looks like we'll be testing our combat capabilities sooner than planned." "We're not ready," Lisa protested. "The weapons systems haven't been fully calibrated." "Neither has their targeting," Summers replied. "They've never seen anything like us. Let's use that advantage." He looked at his crew, determination in his eyes. "Battle stations. It's time to show the hegemony what humanity can do with a pile of junk." The bridge of the U.S. Defiant hummed with tense energy as the crew prepared for their first encounter with the hegemony warship. "They're scanning us," reported Communications Officer Kevin Young. "Their signal patterns suggest they're confused by our configuration." Captain Summers nodded. "Good. Confusion works in our favor." He turned to Tactical Officer Rick Johnson. "Weapons status." "Nuclear pulse generators at 68% capacity," Rick replied. "Shield disruptors ready but untested." "And our special surprise?" Summers asked. Rick smiled slightly. "The modified debris launchers are loaded and ready." On the view screen, the hegemony vessel grew larger, sleek and threatening, its hull gleaming with perfection. Next to that alien beauty, the Defiant looked like what the humans called it in private: a flying junkyard. "They're hailing us," Kevin announced. Summers straightened in his chair. "Put them through." The screen changed to show an alien bridge. The hegemony commander, a tall being with silvery skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, regarded the humans with obvious disdain. "Primitive vessel," the alien said through the translation system. "You are operating in restricted space. Power down and prepare to be boarded for inspection." Summers kept his expression neutral. "This is Captain Greg Summers of the Earth vessel Defiant. We're conducting a routine test flight in our own solar system, which is not yet under hegemony control." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Your deadline approaches, human. The hegemony grows impatient with your delay tactics. We will inspect your vessel now to ensure you are not developing prohibited technologies." Summers glanced at Lisa, who shook her head slightly. They couldn't allow the aliens aboard. They would discover the ship's true purpose. "I'm afraid we must decline," Summers replied. "Our vessel contains sensitive equipment." The alien commander made a gesture to someone off-screen. "Then you leave us no choice but to disable your craft." The transmission cut off. "They're charging weapons," Nancy reported calmly. Summers looked at his crew. "This is what we prepared for. Remember, we don't fight their way. We fight our way." He turned to Maria at the helm. "Evasive pattern delta. Make us look like we're falling apart." The Defiant suddenly jerked sideways as Maria executed the unusual maneuver. From the outside, it appeared as if the ship's engines had malfunctioned, causing pieces to drift in different directions. The hegemony ship fired its first shot, a precise energy beam that sliced through empty space where the Defiant had been moments before. "Now," ordered Summers, "deploy debris cloud." From hidden launchers across the Defiant's hull, hundreds of small objects burst outward, creating a chaotic field of junk that surrounded both ships. The hegemony sensors, designed to track orderly movements, struggled to distinguish the Defiant among the floating debris. "They're adjusting targeting," Nancy warned. "Second volley incoming." "Phase 2, Summers commanded. The apparently random pieces of debris suddenly changed course, propelled by tiny hidden thrusters. They clustered around the hegemony ship, some attaching to its smooth hull like barnacles. "What are they doing?" the alien commander demanded of his crew as the strange objects clung to their ship. "Unknown, Commander," his science officer replied. "They appear to be simple metallic objects, but they're generating unusual energy patterns." Back on the Defiant, Dr. Foster monitored the readings from his station. "The disruption devices are in position. Ready on your command, Captain." Summers waited until the hegemony ship fired again, this time at what they thought was the Defiant's main section. "Activate nuclear pulse," Summers ordered. A carefully calibrated burst of radiation, invisible to the naked eye but devastating to hegemony shield technology, erupted from the Defiant. Simultaneously, the small devices attached to the alien ship began emitting matching frequencies. On the hegemony vessel, alarms blared as shields flickered and failed. Systems crashed across their ship as the radiation pattern disrupted their sensitive electronics. "Direct hit," Rick reported. "Their weapons are offline." The Defiant launched its simplest yet most effective weapons. Chunks of space debris accelerated to incredible speeds. The unshielded hegemony ship took multiple hits along its hull. "Target their communications array," Summers directed. "We need to send a message, not destroy them." A final projectile struck the alien vessel precisely where Kevin had identified their communication systems. The hegemony ship drifted, damaged but intact. "They're switching to emergency power," Nancy reported. "Minimal life support only." Summers nodded, satisfied. "Open a channel." News of the Defiant's victory spread quickly. Within hours, the entire human race knew that their junkyard warship had defeated a hegemony vessel. Hope replaced fear as people realized they might have a chance after all. When the hegemony deadline arrived, Earth was ready. Not with a fleet of ships. There had been no time to build more vessels like the Defiant, but with a carefully planned defense. The Defiant would lead the fight, supported by every functional spacecraft humans could muster. Admiral Linda Peterson coordinated Earth's defense from Lunar Command Center. On her main screen, 12 massive hegemony warships appeared at the edge of the solar system. "So it begins," she said quietly. On the bridge of the Defiant, now fully repaired and improved after its first battle, Captain Summers addressed his crew. "The hegemony thinks they're here to conquer Earth," he told them. "Instead, they'll learn what humans can do when backed into a corner. We may be outnumbered, but we're not outmatched." The hegemony fleet moved toward Earth with perfect formation, their ships identical in design and function. When they detected the Defiant approaching, they seemed almost amused. "Attention human vessel," came the transmission from the hegemony flagship. "Your demonstration against our scout ship was noted but changes nothing. Surrender and submit to hegemony rule, or be destroyed along with your world." Summers smiled slightly. "We have a counteroffer." He nodded to Kevin, who activated a special transmission. Every hegemony ship received detailed scans of their own vessels, highlighting the weaknesses the humans had discovered. "We know exactly how to defeat each of your ships," Summers continued. "Withdraw from our solar system, and we'll keep that knowledge to ourselves." There was a pause before the alien commander responded, his voice cold with anger. "You dare threaten the hegemony? We will show you the price of defiance." The hegemony fleet opened fire, but the Defiant was already moving, seemingly breaking apart as it had in the previous battle. This time, however, the strategy was more complex. While the aliens focused on the Defiant, hundreds of small spacecraft launched from hidden bases throughout the solar system. Some were merely shuttles with minimal weapons, others were mining vessels repurposed for combat. What they all shared was humanity's new understanding of hegemony technology. The battle raged across the solar system. The Defiant led the attack, its strange maneuvers confusing the alien targeting systems. When the hegemony adapted to one tactic, the humans switched to another. "They're trying to surround us," Nancy reported as 3 hegemony ships moved to trap the Defiant. "Perfect," Summers replied. "Spring the trap." Hidden among Saturn's rings, Earth's improvised fleet launched a coordinated attack on the hegemony's flank. Each small ship carried nuclear pulse emitters calibrated to the exact frequency that disrupted alien shields. 2 hegemony vessels fell quickly. A third managed to destroy several human ships before the Defiant circled back and disabled it with precision strikes. Hour after hour, the battle continued. The Defiant suffered heavy damage but kept fighting. When one system failed, the crew rerouted power through another. When a section was breached, they sealed it off and continued. Finally, the hegemony flagship stood alone, surrounded by Earth's surviving vessels and the battle-scarred Defiant. "Your fleet is defeated," Summers transmitted to the alien commander. "Surrender now." The alien's response came after a long pause. "This outcome was not calculated as possible." "That was your mistake," Summers replied. "Humans specialize in achieving the impossible." 2 days later, in Earth's orbit, human leaders met with the hegemony commander. A new agreement was negotiated, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. "The hegemony acknowledges Earth's sovereignty," the alien representative stated formally. "We offer peaceful relations and exchange of knowledge." President Powell nodded. "Earth accepts, with the understanding that all species have something valuable to contribute to the galaxy." As the meeting concluded, Lisa Wright stood at a viewport, watching the damaged but victorious Defiant orbit slowly below them. "It doesn't look like much," said Admiral Morgan, joining her. "It looks exactly like what it is," Lisa replied. "A testament to human ingenuity. We took what others considered junk and built something legendary." The Defiant caught the sun's light as it emerged from Earth's shadow, its mismatched hull gleaming like a beacon. Not beautiful in any conventional sense, but magnificent in what it represented: humanity's refusal to surrender and their ability to forge greatness from the most unlikely materials.